Have you ever been triggered in a relationship? Maybe it feels like your partner has said something and you feel your body concaving as if you're just slowly closing in. Maybe you've been triggered in a relationship and it has felt like explosive anger instead. No judgment. The truth is, we all struggle with emotional triggers. And the thing is, emotional triggers in relationships can be like little landmines that get placed everywhere. It can seem as if you're walking and having a great time in your relationship, and then you step on one of those landmines, those emotional triggers, and it's going to cause that exploding emotion, and it's going to be unexpected. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Thursday Tickles. Hey, Maddie. Hi, Jessica. I am so excited for today's Thursday Tickles. I'm going to be talking about emotional triggers in relationships, how they show up, why they show up. And I'm also going to be telling you about some powerful tools that you can use to really effectively communicate. Because the truth is, when we get triggered, it can be really difficult to think clearly and to effectively say what our needs are. Because when we get triggered, our body goes into that state of survival again. Our nervous system begins to respond and our brain responds as well, with different stress chemicals being released and rational thought being shut down. But that was last week's tickle. So if you're looking for more of that, let me know in the comments and I'd love to share that video with you. But coming back to today's Thursday tickle, take a moment and think about what emotional triggers are you aware of in your relationship? Maybe it's the fear of abandonment. Maybe it's feeling unwanted. Maybe it's your partner continuously leaving the milk carton in the fridge without any milk being in it. No judgment again. Being able to become aware of what our emotional triggers are is going to make walking in that field of relationship a lot safer. If we know where the landmines are, we're going to be able to effectively prep and plan for it. Maybe one of your emotional triggers is a trigger to your partner's trigger. The truth is, there are so many different ways that triggers are going to show up. And for those of you who are new to emotional triggers are when some experience happens, whether someone says something, we smell something, we see something, and we end up getting taken back to a past experience of emotional intensity. So it's as if in that present moment, we are getting triggered back to that state of whenever that intense emotion happened. It can really cause us to go into fight, flight, or freeze. And it can also make rational thought, like I said earlier, really difficult for us. Think for a moment, how do you feel? How do you react to the world when you don't feel safe? Because that's what emotional triggers are. It's putting us into that state of emotional intensity once again. And from that state of emotional intensity, our nervous system isn't going to feel safe. It's going to start to fight, flight, or freeze response. When you're not feeling safe, do you feel lovey-dovey? Do you feel sexy and intimate? Think about it. And think about this as well, because a big part of being triggered sometimes can be from your partner's trigger. So when your partner's being triggered and maybe you haven't been triggered yet, trying to be mindful about what that is going on in their nervous system. How can you be there to support and to try and create a sense of safety? And coming back to how you can effectively communicate in relationships is to also think about, what do you need when you get triggered to feel safe? Do you need transparency? Do you need open communication? Do you need to set some boundaries? Do you need space? So a little overview of what I've said so far. When we get emotionally triggered, our brain and body are going to respond from a place of survival. From that place of survival, we're not going to feel safe, and it's going to be really difficult to explore rational thought. And it's really difficult to explore rational thought. It's going to have a difficult time to remember things as well. And we're going to get a lot of stress chemicals going on. So it really helps to be able to effectively communicate in a relationship if you know what your triggers are and you know what you're going to need to feel safe when you're getting triggered. It's kind of like creating a secret little roadmap to your sense of safety. So that way, when you get taken back into that past experience of intense emotion, you can kind of have that roadmap, that Google Maps, to kind of get back to the point, get back to that place of safety and healthy communication. Because triggers come in all shapes and sizes. And when we're being triggered, it's like our brain gets really foggy and it makes it difficult to effectively have a clear relationship, clear communication, even a clear sense of love and safety. So what to do? Okay, Des, I know what my triggers are, and I get that I'm going into an active state of survival, but what do I do besides know what my triggers are? So a couple of things on how you can really process having effective communication in a relationship, even when you're emotionally triggered. A couple of things I want to share with you on how to do that is active listening. Active listening, and I know you're probably like, Des, that's so annoying. I know. But what I mean by that is that if you are able to focus on what your partner is saying, despite being triggered, it's also an act of mindfulness. It can also really keep us there in the present moment, as opposed to letting our brain spiral with all of the different potential stories and past experiences that it might be thinking of to kind of validate its experience. Any of you ever experienced that? Where maybe you are just so in your head that you can't even listen to what's going on. Maybe you're predicting the future, or you're just going into a anger spiral, going to a place of guilt, shame, resentment, whatever it is, no judgment, for there's no judgment in healing. But really being able to practice active listening is going to help regulate that nervous system as well, because you're going to be engaging in mindfulness and kind of slowing your nervous system down into an area of focus, which I also want to acknowledge can be really difficult when we're triggered, but you can do it. I can see you in your power and strength. You've got this. And if you need any resources on how to regulate your nervous system, shoot me a message. I'm here for it all. But some other ways to effectively communicate besides active listening is really going to be to also validate. Validation is something that I strongly believe, because it's in that place of validation that we can really start to move from a place of anger, shame, guilt, blame, or resentment, and into a place of action. And nothing cuts faster through fear than action. And again, when we're getting triggered, we're going into that state of survival. We're going to that state of safety, finding a sense of safety. And so being able to validate yourself is going to be really important. Oh my goodness, I'm getting triggered right now. Why am I getting triggered? Why am I feeling this way? Being able to connect to the fact that everything you think and feel is for a reason, it's going to give you a lot more power and choice in being able to navigate in the future. Because think about it. Have you ever done something and you're like, oh man, why did I do that? Now I'm just kind of like going into maybe a shame spiral or a guilt spiral. Maybe you go into some ruminating thought patterns that aren't exactly healthy or loving or kind. And then the next time it happens, you just kind of do it again. But maybe the guilt or shame blanket gets even heavier. A big little stepping stone in that kind of a break in that pattern is to acknowledge and validate yourself, even if it's just by connecting to your why. Why did you do that? Once you know why you did that, you're bringing in that sense of compassion and awareness, and you get to have more power and choice. Now that I know why I'm being triggered, why this behavioral pattern is showing up, now what am I going to do about it? Because the truth is, awareness can be a beautiful thing, but awareness without action, it can be really limiting and it can make you feel stuck. So just know that awareness does kind of come with a little catch. It comes with a little best friend, and that awareness best friend is, of course, going to be taking action. And if anybody, again, wants some support around that, just let me know. I'm here for it all. Okay. Thursday tickles are meant to be short times where I tickle you with information for your personal expansion. Why? So you can have more power and choice in navigating all of life's challenges and hardships. So I'm only going to cover 2 more ways to really effectively communicate when you're being emotionally triggered. So you've got active listening, we've got validation. Another thing that's going to be really important is emotional regulation. How can you regulate your nervous system? How can you regulate your emotions despite going into a high state of emotion, whether that's intense or survival, whatever it is? There's so many different ways that you can regulate your emotions. One of my favorite kind of in the moment quick tips, which you can also use if you're really struggling with anxiety or panic attacks, is to have something cold, something ice cold. If you're actually in the middle of like a high level anxiety or feeling that panic attack coming on, a great thing that you can do is get a frozen bag of peas or ice or whatever and put it on your forehead. And this is actually a technique from dialectical behavioral therapy. But what is happening is when we go into that state of trigger, of survival, all the blood is going to be rushing to our frontal lobe. So being able to put something frozen is actually going to calm the mind, and it's actually going to trick the brain into thinking that we're freezing to death. But you know that you're not freezing to death. You know that you just have a frozen bag of peas on your head, or French fries, or whatever it is that you like to freeze eat. And That's a great way to kind of regulate yourself. If you know that you're going to be maybe going into an area that you do get triggered often, maybe you want to talk about some boundaries with your partner. You want to maybe bring up something that might lead to confrontation, but you don't want it to lead to a fight and you don't want to get triggered. Being able to have an ice cold glass of water for you and your partner can really help regulate your nervous system. And there are so many other different ways to regulate your emotions, but that's just a really big hot tip one that I want to share with you. And the final thing that I really want to share is when it comes to navigating triggers and effectively communicating, it is so important to know what your triggers are. If you don't know what your triggers are, think about any time that you're engaging in conversation or doing something and you can feel that visceral, intense response. Maybe it shows up in a relationship as if someone just said something and now you're in it. You're feeling angry. You're feeling resentful. Maybe the people around you feel like that's not a warranted emotion, but I promise you it is, because everything you think and feel is for a reason. You've had a unique set of past experiences that the people around you haven't had. So it's going to make sense that you're going to respond to triggers differently than they will. But that's a great way to kind of figure out, am I being triggered right now? Do I feel safe? If I don't feel safe, how am I responding and how am I kind of reacting to my partner in this way? So self-awareness is going to be so important, being able to effectively communicate. And in that place of self-awareness, not just to know what your triggers are and to be able to effectively express and communicate that with your partner, but to also start putting boundaries around that. I know that this is where I get triggered, so I'm gonna have to create some space. Hey, honey, I just want to let you know that when you say these things, this is how I feel. Being able to safely and lovingly talk about your needs, your wants, and your desires while maintaining some boundaries around it is going to be key in you and your partner being able to navigate emotional triggers together. Now, the thing is, I know when it comes to emotional triggers, you're like, I don't want anybody else to be a part of this. And I get it. I know it can be really scary. But this Thursday Tickle topic is on emotional triggers in relationships. If you're not feeling safe with your partner to talk about your emotional triggers, then I encourage you to not do that, but to find someone else that you can talk about emotional triggers with. And just know that there's no shame in it. We all struggle with emotional triggers. Some people get scared of the dark. Some people really don't like loud noise. So many of us struggle with the fear of abandonment, and just being able to recognize, validate our triggers, and really share them in a sense of safety while we explore what action we're going to take around it is important. Because remember, awareness without action is extremely limiting and can make you feeling stuck and resentful. So everybody, these are my Thursday tickles. Like I said, a time where I tickle you with information for your personal expansion. Why? So you can have more power and choice in navigating life's adventures and challenges. If you've got any questions, know that I'm here as a resource. If you want some one-on-one support, I invite you to book a Breakthrough to Trust call with me. It's a free 30-minute call where I get to know you and your story. We can talk about your past experiences and really lay out a plan for your triggers in a way that feels safe and exploratory. And of course, fun, because even though triggers are heavy, they don't have to be scary. They can be light, they can be playful, and I'm there to hold that space with you. Even though I'm afraid of the dark and spooky movies, I'm not afraid to stay in any heavy or dark emotions with you. I'm Des Caminos, embodiment life coach, and I love you guys. Bye, Maddie. Bye, Jessica. Bye, Andrew. Bye. Awkward time where I get off live. Awkward time where I get off live. Am I out? Bye, women of wisdom.